This storyline consists of four parts: the aftermath, the sniper, the doctor, and the healer. These parts will show Nick the Wolf after he's gone through the metal virus and explain why he wasn't helping the restoration during the events of the metal virus. Part 1: The Aftermath. We see Nick the Wolf in Spagonia running away from Zombots. We see him stopping them with his Chaos Shield before he gets into one of the buildings. We see that he's wearing a torn shirt and a poncho made from what seems like any fabric he could get his hands on. Something that would just keep him warm. His shoes are battered and his tech seems drained. After stopping the Zombots from getting into the building he's in, he sees a half-eaten granola bar and he utters one word upon seeing it: food. He rushes over and starts to devour it quickly. He then looks at his stomach and says that he's still hungry. Shortcut, we see him on the roof of a building. He says that he's safe for now, but he's tired, which is reflected in the bags under his eyes. He says that he needs to head back to the clock tower, the closest thing he's had to a home right now. We see him there, and he says that going out has gotten more dangerous. He looks outside the tower, and then he looks down before he shakes his head, saying there's still hope, but he'd feel better if he wasn't stuck in Spagonia. Suddenly, a very bright light comes from outside the window. Nick turns around and covers his eyes. The light fades, and he looks outside. And he sees that Spagonia looks just as it did before, but something's different. The constant mechanical growling of the Zombots is gone. He looks down and hears people yawning, breathing, sighing, as if they'd just woken up from a long sleep. What happened? Wait, they're cured. It's over. We jump to 2 days later. Nick has found himself running down the street, sniffing around for anyone. He doesn't find anyone, though, and says that he should head back to the tower. Once there, he sees a police officer, who Nick refers to as Captain. She asks Nick if he found anyone, and Nick asks the same thing. Captain says that they found several more missing people, but that Nick needs to get some sleep. He says that he's fine. He needs to keep searching. Captain tells Nick that it's been several days since the start of the metal virus in Spagonia, and he still hasn't slept a moment since the beginning. Nick says that he's waiting to make sure everyone's safe. Captain sighs and tells Nick that there's 8 people missing still. Nick thanks her and says that he's about to head off when suddenly Nick senses something. Captain asks Nick what's happening. Nick looks up and gasps, saying that he needs a mirror. Nick grabs a small mirror and reflects light at the shuttle. On the shuttle, we see Jewel, Amy, and a pilot. The person flying says that there's something shining in their eye. Amy tells them to get out of their chair for a moment. She notices that it's repeating consistently, like a distress signal. Amy tells them to set the shuttle down, and the pilot nods. We jump to the shuttle landing in Spagonia, near the clock tower, and Nick greets Amy. Amy sees him and gasps, and then angrily punches him in the arm, asking where he's been. Nick explains that shortly after the metal virus broke out, after she told him that the metal virus was breaking out, he got stuck in Spagonia and couldn't signal anyone for help. Amy sighs before Jewel asks who this is. Amy explains that Nick the Wolf works with restoration, but in a more indirect way. Amy then looks at Nick again and says that he looks terrible. She then asks him if he's okay. Nick the Wolf just stares blankly, as if the question echoes in his head over and over. She wakes him back to the real world, asking if he's in there. Nick responds that he's here, and that he's fine. Nick tells Amy that there are still 8 citizens of Spagonia who are missing. Jules says that she'll have the people they brought with them start searching the city for stragglers. Nick thanks her. Amy says that there's supplies on the shuttle anyone can use. She then looks at Nick and tells him that he won't help anymore. Nick asks why, and she says that he looks tired. Nick says that she's right, and that he hasn't slept since the outbreak started here. Amy tells him that there are beds for him to sleep in the shuttle, if he finally wants to rest. Nick looks at Captain, who nods, and Nick says that he really does need the sleep, and with the restoration here now, he might finally be able to do that. He thanks Amy and then makes his way to the shuttle. Amy directs him to the bunks before he gets into bed, and as soon as he gets comfortable, he instantly falls asleep. Part 2: The Sniper. We see Nick the Wolf with Silver the Hedgehog. A prompt appears saying that this takes place during the war against Eggman. Nick and Silver appear to be trying to destroy Badniks, trying to get into the base. Nick tells Silver that he thinks they're doing great. Silver suddenly tells Nick to watch out behind him. Nick is about to use Chaos Spear behind him, but suddenly a laser goes right through the Badnik, and it heads to the ridge not too far away. Nick tells Silver that was the sniper. Silver gasps in excitement, saying that he's excited to hear that they're getting cover from the Guardian Angel. Nick tells them that they're here for one thing, and that's to destroy the factory. Silver remembers. We seem to flash forward as we see Nick and Silver leaving the factory. Nick says that it'll blow any minute and that they need to get out of here fast. Nick sees a person on a ledge, and Nick knows that they're the sniper. Nick tells Silver that he'll catch up soon. We see the sniper, who we know is Whisper the Wolf. However, her face is blacked out since he never saw her face, as the factory suddenly explodes, and she's about to be blasted by the explosion, when suddenly, she isn't. Instead, she finds herself protected by Nick's Chaos Shield. The blast stops, and Nick, upon noticing her mask is off, covers his eyes, not wanting to see her face, saying that he didn't mean to disturb her, but that she should go before Silver gets too good a look at her and freaks out. He hears her dash away and looks back towards her where she was, and she was gone. Silver runs over to him asking what he was doing, and Nick says that he was returning a favor. The image flashes us forward. While Nick is sleeping on a sofa, a prompt appears saying, "Now," telling us that these events are taking place in the present after the metal virus. Nick the Wolf yawns and then rubs his eyes before panicking as he looks around, thinking he's been kidnapped. Jewel looks over and sees he's awake, but when she starts to approach, Nick growls at her. For a moment, Jewel asks Nick if he remembers her from 2 days ago. She reminds him of her name, and he realizes that he's safe and calms down. Jewel asks if he's okay and almost puts a hand on his shoulder, but he slaps it away quickly, telling her, "Don't touch me." Jewel apologizes and asks if he's alright, and he says that he's fine and well rested. He also says that he's sorry for that, but he doesn't like being touched like that. Jewel says that she'll keep that in mind from now on, and asks him how he's feeling. Nick responds saying that he feels strong again. He tries to stand, but then falls. Jewel asks him if he's okay, and Nick says that he's fine, but doesn't know why that happened. Jewel says that he shouldn't try to stand on account that he's been asleep for 2 days. Nick does a double take on that last part and asks Jewel to confirm that she said 2 days. Jewel confirms he was asleep for 2 days, and Nick realizes and shouts it. Jewel, however, says that it was more like 60 hours. Nick says that that's probably why they moved him from the shuttle. He looks down and realizes that he's still in his poncho, but he had a weird dream. Jewel says that she hopes it wasn't a nightmare, and that they've been through enough through the metal virus. Nick says it wasn't a nightmare, it was more like a memory of the time during the war. Jewel says that she knows he's been through a lot, but she'll be here anytime he wants to get some fresh air. Nick tells her that he'd like to get going. Jewel says that his legs might still be pretty weak, and Nick says that if he stays here, he'll become even weaker. Jewel then says that she'll help him take a walk outside. She helps him up, and they go. Upon exiting, Nick notices that Emeraldville isn't being repaired. Jewel says that the restoration is currently building a new HQ underneath the ruins of Emeraldville, in the ruins of an old mall. Nick says that that sounds nice. Jewel tells him that they're also planning on putting a hidden entrance underneath Silver's shed. Nick remembers Silver and says that he can't believe he almost forgot to ask, but he wonders where Silver is. And Jewel responds saying that he had to go back to the future after the metavirus cleared out, and no one's seen him since. Nick sighs, saying he wishes that he could have said goodbye. The two continue walking when Nick says that he thinks he can walk on his own now. Jewel says that that's great, and Nick starts to walk by himself. He says that once he's at 100%, he's wondering what Jewel wants him to do, and Jewel says that the first thing she wants him to do is put on some actual clothes. Nick looks down at his poncho and says that he does wish he had something a little more real than the torn shirt and the poncho. Jewel says that that's fine and the restoration can get him a new outfit. Nick looks down at the outfit and nervously, almost reluctantly, declines the offer for a new one. Upon hearing this, Jewel asks Nick if he's okay, which makes him freeze up completely again, making him look a little distraught and confused. Jewel asks again if he's okay, and he quickly responds saying that he's fine and just wants to be given his gear back so he can be sent on a mission. Jewel says that Tails is currently fixing his gear. Nick sighs and says that he wants out of here right now. Jewel looks at him sadly, then calms Whisper to help him out. Upon arrival, Whisper asks what Jewel needs, and Nick remembers her. Nick gasps, saying that she's the sniper. Whisper says that she remembers him. He rescued her from an explosion that she didn't see coming. Nick says that that was just him returning the favor, and Whisper introduces herself. Jewel asks Whisper if she can help him get to Tails' workshop, so that he can collect his gear from Tails since he's so eager to get back in the field. Whisper nods and tells Nick to follow her. The two of them walk in silence for a bit, before Whisper asks Nick if he's comfortable with wisps, to which he says that he really likes them. Whisper sends out her wisps and tells them not to wander too far. Whisper's cyan wisps floats right over to Nick, and he says that Cyan is really friendly. Whisper then says she has a question for him. She asks why he calls her the sniper when she's always been called the guardian angel by everyone else. Nick tells her that he didn't like the name, he thought it was too long. Whisper says that that's fair. Whisper then asks Nick why he's still wearing his poncho. Nick says that a lot is happening right now and he doesn't need any more change at the moment. Whisper says that makes sense, however, it's probably not helping him deal with the metal virus problem. Nick asks her how she knows about that, to which she says she's someone who's been in a pretty bad headspace before, and that she knows that he's going through something. Nick sighs and says that he has no idea how to talk about this, and Whisper says that he needs to talk about it, otherwise he can't heal. Nick says that he'll be fine as soon as he gets his gear. Whisper says that in that case, they'll keep walking to Tails' workshop. Cyan gets on Nick's head, and Whisper says one more thing. She says she knows someone who helped her through a load of her baggage, and allowed her to start healing, named Tangle the Lemur. Nick says he doesn't want a therapist, and Whisper says that Tangle isn't a therapist, she's just a really nice person, and a really good listener. She tells Nick to think about it after he gets his gear back, and Nick starts to think about it. Part 3. The Doctor. We see Nick and Silver, as Nick seems to be upgrading his silver gloves, and Silver tells Nick that he can do this, and seems to be reinforcing him. The prompt says 2 days before the metal virus. Nick then smashes his fists together, and a blue outline surrounds him. Silver says that that's a good sign, and Nick then uses his power to quickly zip past Whisper and behind him. Nick says that it worked perfectly. He's able to fly around using his silver gloves, making it even more like Silver's psychokinesis. Silver congratulates him, and the two of them high-five. We flash forward to Nick and Whisper making it to Tails' workshop, and Nick says that he's glad to finally be here. Nick and Whisper enter Tails' workshop, and Nick says hi to Tails. Tails greets the two of them, and Nick asks about his gear, and Tails says that he finished working on it. Whisper says that this is where she'll make her leave. She then reminds Nick of what she told him. If he needs help with his baggage, he can go to Tangle the Lemur for help. She finishes her thought by saying that Tangle lives in Spiral Hill. Whisper leaves, and Nick says that he hopes to work with her again in the future. Whisper waves bye to him. Tails walks in with a tray of Nick's gear and tells him that it's all repaired and ready to go. Nick thanks him and starts grabbing it. We go forward to Nick fighting a couple of badniks, and he's a little bit in trouble. We get a prompt saying that it's been a whole week since he was at Tails' workshop. After defeating the Badniks, he asks himself what's wrong with him, and he felt like he was having so much trouble with plain Badniks. He says that he feels perfectly fine. He does, however, mention that every time he attacked one of them, he thought he was going to get infected by the metal virus. Nick says that he might be having more problems mentally than he thought. He asks himself if he's really okay. Is he okay? He just went through so much, and now he can't stop thinking that basic badniks are a bigger struggle than they should be. He also had so many issues during the metal virus, being alone in the apocalypse, stuck in that stupid clock tower, so scared he couldn't sleep. Not to mention he had to prevent himself from getting infected. Suddenly, a gust of wind passes him, and Nick asks if that was Suddenly, he's tripped up and falls, and in front of him is Dr. Starline. Nick asks who this guy is, and Starline introduces himself, saying that he's come to do research on Nick's chaos abilities, since they could be helpful in his current project. Nick says he's had enough of people trying to get anything out of him and fights Starline. During the fight, Starline gloats that he has the speed of Sonic, the flight of Tails, and the strength of Knuckles. Nick goes against that, saying that he's emulated their abilities, but there's no way he's at their level of skill. At one point, Starline uses his poison heal dart, and Nick takes the hit. Starline tells Nick that he's formidable, but he seems to be slipping today. Nick, however, goes through his mind and says that he needs all the mental power he can muster here. He gets up, and Starline says that that dose of toxin should have completely immobilized him, to which Nick says that, while that's true, he's been trained to resist such toxins. Starline decides to try to give him a second dose, but Nick uses his silver gloves and flies right up behind Starline and uses his Chaos Fist, hitting him in the back, knocking him away. Starline doesn't take it well. He responds to the attack by saying, "Well then, you're better than anticipated. Very well. No need to risk my plans for something optional. I shall take my leave." Starline runs away, using his speed section of his Tricore, and he gets away. Nick says that could have gone better. He admits to himself that he may need help after all. He thinks to himself for a moment and says, "Okay, Whisper, you win. I'll check out your friend in Spiral Hill so that I can finally get better." Part 4: The Healer. Nick the Wolf arrives in Spiral Hill and says that this place is actually really nice. He says that he should ask someone if they've heard of this Tangle person when he suddenly passes a skate park. Nick says that it looks fun and jumps in. He skates for a bit when suddenly a lemur, who we know is Tangle, jumps in on her bike and does some tricks. Nick says that she's impressive, and she says that he's not so bad himself, with his rocket skates. Nick laughs and introduces himself. The name's Nick the Wolf, chaos-powered mercenary. Tangle introduces herself too, telling him that her name is Tangle. Nick gasps upon hearing her name and asks if she knows Whisper. Tangle says that she does. Nick tells Tangle that he needs her help. Tangle asks what a chaos-powered mercenary would need her help with, and Nick says that he doesn't need her help with a mission right now, but he needs her help to clear his mind. Tangle tells them that she's not sure how she can help, and Nick responds saying that Whisper told him that if he needed it, he should go to her, and that she could help him handle everything that happened to him. Tangle says that she's no one special, but she does know that a lot happened during the metal virus. Tangle says that the only way she knows that she can help is by making him talk about it, unless he wants her help making much better fashion choices. Nick sighs and says that if that's the only way, he'll talk about it. We get a flashback to just a few seconds before the metal virus broke out in Spagonia. Nick appears to be eating at a restaurant. He gets a call from Amy, saying that he'll be at the restoration as soon as possible so that he can help contain the outbreak. Once off the call, though, suddenly a shadow casted over Spagonia, and Nick looks up towards the sun to see what's causing, and he sees the face ship. Nick narrates over the flashback and says that Eggman must have known he was there and decided to make it so that he couldn't communicate with anyone. Nick asks what's going on when suddenly the face ship fires something from it, which appears to make a shockwave, and it depowers Nick's tech. Nick narrates that having his communications cut was one thing, but the face ship contained the outbreak to Spagonia by blasting all the gates shut, making it so that he couldn't escape with a large amount of time and effort. Nick then looks up, and knowing what's about to happen, he starts to tell everyone to run away before they get infected. But then the face ship dumps the metal virus onto Spagonia. Nick barely gets away from the metal virus scoop. The others weren't so lucky. Nick looks upon them and asks what's happening to them. As one turns into a zombot, Nick says that that's a big problem. He starts to run away, not able to use his rocket skates, and says that there's gotta be a way out of Spagonia, right? He narrates saying that Eggman covered all exit points, including sewers, collapsing all the tunnels and making other exits impossible. Outside the flashback, Nick says that he tried to help as many people as he could, but anyone he met turned into a zombot pretty quickly after he found them. He narrates that the closest he got to saving someone was when they got inside his base, but while trying to shut the door, one of the zombots touched the guy he saved. The guy asks him to let him stay. He doesn't know what to do. If he allows him to stay, Nick will get infected. He says he's sorry, but can't risk it. He runs up the stairs and hears the guy scream for him to help. He reaches the top of the clock tower and barricades the entrance as if he was just in a routine here. He then sits against the barricade and starts to sob. After that day, he stopped going out of the clock tower every day and stayed there unless he needed to go out to look for food. As he narrates, he mentions how he heard screams of all the citizens of Spagonia as zombots started to get them until day 4, when he no longer heard people. They had all turned except for him. He was completely alone. Outside the flashback, Tangle looks at him concerned and asks him if he's okay. Nick stares off into the distance. She asks him what's wrong again, which snaps him out of his trance. Nick apologizes, and he continues the story. Nick narrates that after that, he just went out to look for supplies and used his shield to fight back against the zombots. He didn't know if he could attack them with his Chaos Fist, but didn't want to risk it. He narrates that at the end of day 6, he was really starting to feel it. He didn't think anyone was coming and didn't know what would be worse, turning into those zombots or death. He says that he knew that couldn't be the end yet. He knew someone out there still cared enough to help him eventually, no matter how things were for him. He says that he was tired and hungry, but worst of all, he was lonely. If he had just one person with him, things would have been much easier. He could have gotten some peaceful rest. The hairs on his head wouldn't have turned so gray. Tangle bear hugs him, saying that she's so sorry that happened to him. Nick, however, starts struggling and screams as Tangle asks what's wrong, to which Nick tells her to let him go. Tangle does so, and Nick jumps away from her as he asks what that was. Tangle sarcastically explains that that was a hug and she did it to try to comfort him. Nick says that he didn't like it. Tangle asks Nick if he's actually never been hugged or has heard of hugs before. Nick says that he doesn't like being touched at all, especially after what he's just been through. Tangle says that she's sorry, but that she didn't know what else to do. Nick sighs and says that maybe Tangle isn't able to help him. He only feels worse now. Tanglin says that she really does want to help him. Nick asks why she cares so much, and Tangle just says that she hates to see him feeling so awful, and all she wants to do is help him. Nick says that he's okay being touched in one spot, on top of the head. Tangle puts her tail there and scratches him on the head a little bit. He looks happy and thanks her. Tangle says that if for him it's the equivalent of a hug, she sees no difference. He then looks at her with a couple tears in his eyes and thanks her again, this time for letting him talk about it for a bit. He says that he doesn't really feel much better, but feels it a little bit. Tangle says that he should probably stop carrying all that around with him. Nick asks what she means, and Tangle says that Nick chooses to keep everything the same by holding on to the past. Nick says he isn't, but Tangle asks him if that's the case, why he's still wearing that stupid poncho. All it's doing is reminding him of the metal virus. If he wants to change, then he has to be willing to give up the past. Nick nods in understanding and says that he would like a new outfit. Tangle laughs and says that there's a store in Spiral Hill he can go to. We see later Tangle standing outside a changing room where Nick walks out asking her how he looks, and she seems very excited. We see Nick the Wolf in his blue hoodie and jacket, rocket skates, that we all know today. Tangle says she loves it. Nick says that it's super comfortable. He doesn't have to worry about his tail causing him problems as he puts it on either. It's great. Nick and Tangle then shake hands outside, as Nick thanks Tangle for all the help. She says that it was no problem, and that she hopes to meet him again sometime. We then see Nick the Wolf speed off through the hills, as he says that it's about time he gets back to work, and he knows that everything's going to be alright. Okay, that was really hard to record. That's going to be really annoying to edit, but thank you guys so much for watching this video. I really do appreciate it. I put so much effort into this video, and there's a reason it came out like 3 months after it was announced. Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed it, remember to like, comment, subscribe, turn on notifications, share this video with everyone you know and love, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye!